Natalie says, hello, Peter and team. What do you think about night dreaming? What happens to us when we are asleep? What do you think about lucid dreaming? Oh, there's a topic. Now, I've addressed this a couple of times, but I'll give you guys some reminders, especially as to where I'm at, which is here for the next few days with Tom. And let's revisit some of the fundamental premises on which the model of reality that I teach is based on. This is a virtual reality. In other words, physical reality, what we perceive as physical reality is not base reality. Okay? Meaning that there is something more fundamental that creates this reality or this experience that we have called physical matter reality here on Earth in Earth School. So what generates this reality, right? Well, it's not in it of itself, right? We only need to go back to the established theory of how the universe began, which was the Big Bang. What was the Big Bang? Go ask a material scientist, a Newtonian physicist, and he'll tell you all about the stuff on how particles work or how they think particles work and how the universe, the physical universe works. Right? Don't talk to them about non-physical. What happened before t equals 0? Right? Time equals 0, which is like the creation of the universe, the Big Bang. Oh, no, we don't know. Can you explain how the universe magicked itself out of an infinitesimally small primordial particle and became what we see today? Nope. No, don't ask me that. Ask me the speed of light. Ask me how, what charge electrons have, right? I'll answer all of that stuff. But don't ask me any of the other stuff that I'm going to bury my head in the sand at, which is essentially saying that most physics is predicated on mysticism. They don't like to be faced with that inevitable conclusion to their argument. However, right, if we understand that this is a virtual reality, it started with a Big Bang. How does a computer game start? How did the computer you're watching this on start? Or the phone that you're watching this on start? You turned it on. Where was Zoom when the phone or the computer was off? Where was it? Because if you'd have got a screwdriver and opened up your laptop and a magnifying glass, you wouldn't have found Zoom. If you're in a physical paradigm, that's your only modus operandi. Zoom's inside the computer. Let me get a screwdriver. Let me get a magnifying glass. I'm going to go find it. I know it's in there because, look, I can see it on screen. That's how most scientists are. Let's open up the brain and find consciousness. It doesn't work that way. So if you appreciate that Zoom, when the computer is off, exists in what we call a zero state or a state of possibility, meaning that if certain things happen, it's possible that Zoom can jump up on our screen, i.e. we turn the computer on, we click the icon, and a whole series of actions behind the scenes that we cannot see, touch, smell, hear, or taste start happening based upon a previously written rule set called software that allows us to now have this conversation. Everybody with me still? Okay. So let's go back to the beginning of time. Previously, there was nothing, a zero state, a state of possibility. At which point, somebody's pressed the on button on your laptop, and boom, from a zero state, a massive influx of power. And now all of a sudden, unfolding out of that zero state, we have an environment that is operating by a strict set of rules we call physics, chemistry, biology, that then proceeds to evolve into what we see right now in our three-dimensional screen called Earth. It's a pretty similar parallel, would you agree? Why did we invent virtual realities? Because we're in one. It's coded as part of us. Why did we invent schools? We're in one. Why do we invent movie industry? It's a parallel to what we are as the actors in the movie, not the character. The characters in the movie, not the actor behind the camera. It's what's known as a fractal expression. We were always going to invent virtual realities at some point because it's part of what we're in. It's a natural expression of the curiosity that expresses from the non-physical through to the physical. So with that premise, if we're in a virtual reality, what happens when we go to sleep? In computer language, we log off. Now, we don't log off. We close down Zoom, but the computer's still on, right? What happens? We click a different icon. We're still looking at the computer. We're still experiencing data. It's a different source of data. It's a different data stream that we call a dream. And it operates by a different set of rules than the Zoom program does. It's less tight. It's not as bound by the constraints of the software that Zoom is constrained by. It's a loosey-goosey, loosier-goosier program. So when we dream, we're still identified as the player, correct? We still see ourselves as us. We don't log off and suddenly think we're somebody else. No. When we're dreaming, we hook up to a different TV channel. There is different information playing through the television, but we're still the one that's watching it. Now, when we finish this game, we actually unhook from the identity of this character. That's different. But while we're still in this game, we still have the identity of who we believe we are, male, female, different ethnic background, what have you. We still get a sense of playing the character, but we're playing it in a different reality frame. Everybody follow? So dreaming has several purposes. Right? And by the way, why would you log off? Why would you create a rule set where you would log off for 8 hours out of 24 for the whole game? Because the rule set says there's certain things that have to happen physically and certain things that have to happen non-physically. Physically, we have to repair that because that's the rule set. You need to go sleep. If you go without sleep for too long, you will die. If you go without sleep for a prolonged period of time, you will suffer. Experience that on the boat. So when it comes to the non-physical benefits, there are many. It allows our training team, our personal trainers in Earth School, our non-physical guides, whatever you want to call them, to run scenarios that allow us to show up from a place where we don't normally show up when we're awake in Earth School. And that comes back to what I said on question 1, intellect versus being. See, when you're asleep, you're in theta, which means critical thinking isn't operating. Otherwise, we know we'd wake up when we thought we saw a dead person or our parents that have passed or whatever it may be. Like, oh, what are you doing here, Mark? I thought I was at your funeral 3 years ago. Crap, I don't get. Oh, it must be a dream. We don't have that. So there is no critical thinking operating. In other words, intellect doesn't operate in the dream world. Instead, being operates in the dream world. Meaning if you are going to pick the litter up in the park and your first thought is who's watching, or even if there's no one watching, you think to yourself, I really should do that. You're in the intellect decision-making process. If you pick the litter up in the park because it's who you are, therefore it's what you do, you're doing it from being. You follow? So in a dream, you're going to act from being. It's where you are currently in your journey of maturity or maturation in Earth School. So your school teachers get to see who you really are, not who you are trying to game the system. And one of the reasons for that is so that they can give you the right levels of tests and BLTs, as we call them, basic life tests or graduation events in Earth School. Hence Mother Teresa's phrase, I know God will never give me any more than he knows I can handle, even though I wish he wouldn't trust me as much sometimes. When you have a lucid dream, what happens to your level of fear? Up or down? Yep. What happens to your level of certainty? Yep. Certainty goes up, fear goes down. Isn't that cool? Because now you know you can't be hurt. Now you know the monster isn't real. Now you know you're not going to die. Now you know that, you follow? So while lucid dreaming, although rare, can be trained, there's something much more exciting on offer. It's called lucid living. How you are when you wake up in the dream is how some of you have started to become when you wake up in this reality and realize who you really are. That the monsters aren't really real. That all of the times you were told you couldn't do it doesn't matter. The fact that you got scared because you needed to pay the mortgage and you hadn't got the money wasn't a big deal. And you see this a lot in people that have a near-death experience. They come back. What happens to their level of fear? What happens to their level of joy? Through the roof. So lucid living is far more of a juicier goal. And all you really need to do is remember that you are the character in the movie of your life. But the character is not the actor. If you associate more with the character, you get sucked into the drama of the film. If you associate more with the actor who's playing the character, the one that doesn't die at the end of the movie, I mean, can you imagine, again, yeah, you're given a role and your role in the film ends with you dying like at the end of Armageddon with Bruce Willis or something like that. And the producer says, yeah, but we're going to make it real. We're going to have to blow you up on that asteroid. Sorry. You wouldn't take the script, right? It's like, yeah, we'll look after your family and everything. Like, no, it's Hollywood, baby. Yeah, you don't have to kill me, but I will play the scene in the movie because I know there's more movies after this one when I die in it. Ooh, fractal insight, anyone? So Bruce Willis in Armageddon isn't like scared the whole time he's spent 8 weeks filming that he's going to die. Lucid living gives you the same perspective, which allows you to show up far better in this movie.